So in that sense, the community psychology seems to be as much an intervention in psychology as it is around perhaps community and the politics around disabled people's lives. Can you say a little bit about I suppose the good things about community psychology in terms of the interventions it's doing within psychology?
Well, psychology as a discipline doesn't recognise community psychology in the United Kingdom.
Right.
So there are umpteen formal channels of defining the remit of psychology, from the benchmarking statements for what should be in courses that teach people about psychology to the statements about what professional psychologists actually practice. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've taken issue with is that they don't include some of the features of community psychology.
Right.
So in some ways, community psychology sits outside the discipline of psychology. And I'm always in two minds whether or not we should be arguing for psychology to embrace that more complex, more contextual type of understanding of people's experience or not.
Right.
So, for example, I have never actively supported, I've passively supported in terms of voting for it, but I've never actively supported in terms of devoting time to it, for a professional organisation of community psychology.
Right.
So now, that needs some explaining maybe, that last year, 2010, a section of the British Psychological Society called Community Psychology Section was established. Now, I think that is a waste of very scarce resources that those of us interested in community psychology have. Why organise inside a professional body when a professional body is only there to preserve the interests of people who belong to that profession? So whilst I have argued for a broadening of the recognised curriculum so that students of psychology can be exposed to community psychology, I don't think it's a good use of our resources to be organising as a profession of community psychologists.
Right.
I understand some of the arguments against that, because if you organise within the professional society, you get some of those resources of the professional society to support the practice of community psychology. I'd rather just get out and do some community psychology. So
in that sense, it has a kind of an agitating activist element, community psychology, would you say? Can I just ask a little bit about another kind of term that crops up a lot is the notion of critical psychology. So what is community psychology's relationship with this thing called critical psychology, do you think?
I think that's a difficult thing to answer, because I think I've spoken about community psychology as if there is only one. Everybody who says they do community psych or are interested in community psychology think about it in the same way, and I don't think they do. Mm-hmm. So I think there's diversity within community psychology. I also think there's enormous diversity within critical psychology. Yep. Having just co-written a book called Critical Community Psychology, I'd have to say that I think there's a very close alliance between critical and community psychology. But I think there has to be a very clear theoretical framework against which we assess what being critical means.
Right.
And for me, that's about political economy. It's about, we're talking about a dominant economic system around the world of capitalism, and that has to be understood, within which all other activity and all other resistance to activity also has to be understood. That's quite different from a critical psychology that is just critical. And shows what's wrong with everything.
Right.
As if there is, but not against any kind of a gauge about in what sense is it wrong.
Right.
It's just, so within its own terms. So a critique of psychological methods within the terms of psychological methods is a useful thing to do, but that is a critique of psychological methods. That's not critical psychology.
Right.
But there are critical psychologists, there are publications under the banner of and discussions and debates under the banner of critical psychology that is just criticising, and I don't think that's a useful distinction.
Can I ask, finally, there will be some people watching this video who are coming from activist backgrounds, but also students and researchers coming from different disciplines, for example, sociology. And in the UK, of course, disability studies has always had a very close alliance with sociology and social policy, and has tended to not have a relationship with psychology. Do you see an opportunity then for those students or those researchers from those disciplines of connecting with community psychologists towards developing a broader understanding of the self and society through this kind of connection together?
Yeah, I think so. I think given what I said, what I thought the characteristics of community psychology were, one of the things that goes along with that is interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary thinking. So the ideas and the theories and the methods and the literature that we bring into community psychology is very diverse. And it doesn't just stop at social sciences. So in my own work, I use, in some of our work that we do here, we use ideas from classic ecology and environmental science. There are, from organisational, well, I suppose that's social science, but organisational studies. And so I think just the same way that there is plurality of method and plurality of whatever the other thing I said there was plurality of, I can't remember what it was now, but we have plurality of ideas and thinking.
Perspectives, yeah.
And we have to be able to draw on different ideas to understand, but also to intervene. So I think there's no sort of I think the term from academia is a scholar activist.
Right.
Only using academic material from within psychology is unhelpful, but it's inadequate for community psychology.
Carolyn, thank you very much.